I know you're concerned about how this is all going to end. You voiced to me some concerns that perhaps it's even politically motivated, that Mr. Bernanke wants to keep his job, so he needs to keep the spigot on. But it kind of feels like we're in an environment where the Fed is suggesting that we're in an environment that was more like 2008, 2009 than 2013.
Well, that's what I don't really understand, because we've now had 2+ years of record GDP growth. We've had record corporate profits in 2011 and 2012. The banks are much stronger than they were several years ago. The unemployment rate has gone from 10% to 7.7%, and yet our monetary policy remains firmly anchored in crisis mode. I can't quite square that.
Well, you actually made a comment during the... Come on, spill the beans. You made a comment to Trish and me during the commercial break.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, and it's what Peter was getting at. Well, maybe it's motivated by the Fed chairman's desire to keep his job.
Well, you have to wonder. I mean, if you did want to be reappointed next January, when that decision, and actually that decision would most likely, I think, be made late summer, early September, to reassure the markets, if that was the course of action. So I think that if you wanted to be reappointed, you would be doing everything possible to make the economy as strong as possible, and he seems to believe this is the way to do that.
That said, we've got to assume that the heads of our Federal Reserve are not selfish enough that they're just completely in this for their own interest, one would hope. So he does, at some level, fundamentally believe that this is the right strategy right now. Why do you think it might not be?
Well, you know, here's my concern. We've never been through a period like this now. We've had 5 years of super low interest rates. He's saying it could be 2015, maybe even later, before rates start to tighten. We've never experienced anything like this. So history would tell us that we have to have some healthy level of skepticism. When things go bad, they can go bad quickly. In the late 1970s, I worked in the bond department at Brown Brothers Harriman and Company. The U.S. Treasury 8s of '08, that was the first 30-year Treasury with an 8% coupon on it, lost half of its value in less than 2 years as inflation expectations rose. Monetary policy works with a substantial lag. As inflation expectations start to rise, you can't simply flip a switch and turn them off quickly. It takes time for that to work. And so therein, I think, lies a lot of my concern.
Brian, do you think maybe the Fed would like to see a little inflation, though? I mean, as we look at our record $16 trillion worth of debt, any chance we could eventually inflate our way out of it?
I think the Fed will try, every option. They're looking at all avenues. I think Chairman Bernanke said that they're going to constantly monitor the situation to see when and if they should increase or even or decrease quantitative easing. I think they're probably open to seeing more inflation or open to seeing more growth. And I think right now, they're steady as she goes. This was probably the smallest reaction we've seen in the bond market to a Fed open market operation FOMC announcement. Very little movement in interest rates. Fed continues to buy $85 billion worth of assets each month in treasuries and agencies, in mortgages, and it's continuing to dampen interest rates.
As Howard was just pointing it out, it almost feels like a crisis-style reaction, and yet a lot of the data looks pretty darn good. Do you think that the Fed and Chairman Bernanke is at all, Brian, being irresponsible in its efforts right now?
Well, irresponsible is a pretty strong word. I mean, I think the chairman truly believes in their efforts, and I don't think it's a political effort. I think it's an effort to try to push our economy as strongly as they can. If you look at the decrease in the unemployment rate, certainly a lot of that has been people who have exited the workforce, and we've seen the rate come down because of that. That's partially. So while there might be some improvement in the economic numbers, I think that there's still underlying weakness in our economy, and I think the chairman is trying to make sure that we don't push interest rates up to really dampen even more of the economy. Yeah.